For 2 years, they called him failure, the spineless son-in-law they kicked to the curb. His wife divorced him, her family mocked him, and the city saw him as a joke. Then, the patriarch of their clan lay dying. The city's best doctors declared it hopeless. As the family gathered to vulture over the inheritance, he stormed into the ICU. If anyone takes another step forward, he warned, his eyes blazing, I will make them die. With 13 silver needles, he performed a legendary technique that defied fate, snatching the old man back from Hell's Gate. Yet, the city's #1 medical prodigy publicly denounced him as a fraud, unaware that his own master would have to kneel and call Ethan Grandmaster. At a high-stakes auction, he went head-to-head with the city's ruthless underworld king. Everyone expected his demise. Instead, the king saw his face and bowed his head in terror. His ex-wife, now watching him acquire a billion-dollar hotel with a flick of his wrist, finally confronts him, desperate for answers. He looks at the woman who cast him aside, his voice as cold as ice. You are not worthy of my explanation. The tranquility of the lakeside villa was shattered by a ringing phone. Ethan picked it up, and the name flashing on the screen made his brow furrow, Autumn Wong. His impression of the woman was abysmal. For 2 years, Claire had been merely cold, but this mother-in-law had actively schemed to belittle him, wishing she could sweep him out the door. Now that he had long since left the Chen family, what did she want? Ethan hung up, but the phone immediately rang again, persistent. What is it? He answered, his voice icy. Autumn Wong's shrill, biting voice immediately came through the line. Ethan, I heard you have a formula. You really didn't love Claire, did you? Why didn't you bring it out before? Let me tell you, a lowlife like you will never amount to anything, even if you get lucky. I order you to hand over the formula right now. Her commanding tone was as if Ethan were still the spineless freeloader she could scold at will. A cold smirk touched Ethan's lips. Even saying another word felt like a waste. What gives you the right to order me around? His question stunned Autumn Wong into silence. The man who hadn't dared to breathe too loudly in her presence for 2 years was now talking back to her? What kind of attitude is that? Her voice shot up an octave. I used to respect you, call you Mom, and that was because of Claire. Ethan's voice was calm, but held a bone-chilling coldness. Now, I have nothing to do with her. So what, exactly are you? You dare insult me? Autumn Wong's voice trembled. I dare to hit you too. Want to try? That single sentence choked the words in Autumn's throat. She remembered Ethan's ruthless display at the Chen family's gate, and for a moment, she was speechless. I will say this only once, so you listen carefully. Ethan said, each word deliberate. Out of respect for how old Master Chen treated me, I can let things slide. But if you insist on causing trouble for me, don't blame me for being merciless. With that, he hung up. This pointless entanglement would only sour his mood. Ethan drove to the Golden Faith Company. The place was already a hive of activity, phones ringing off the hook, contracts piling up. Jasmine Liu was swamped, but the moment she saw Ethan, she immediately dropped her work and invited him into her office. Mr. Xiao, I've registered for the land auction. She handed him a file and 2 invitations, then produced 2 bank cards. This is all the liquid capital in the company account, plus some of my personal savings. I believe in all your decisions and will support you completely. Without hesitation, she entrusted the company's entire lifeline and her own personal fortune to the man before her. Ethan looked at her clear, determined eyes, and his heart was moved. This unconditional trust was the fundamental reason he was willing to help her. The next day, at the Grand International Hotel, the usually quiet hotel was now surrounded by luxury cars worth millions. The Seacliff City land auction was being held here. Ethan, accompanied by an assistant sent by Jasmine, found an inconspicuous seat in the back. His goal was clear, Lot 6, the perfect location for the new factory. As he was resting with his eyes closed, a commotion erupted at the entrance. The appearance of a man and a woman brought a brief hush to the hall. The woman was tall, with an icy demeanor and breathtaking beauty. It was Claire Chun. The man beside her was the arrogant Chad Liang. What a small world. Luna Lee, with her sharp eyes, quickly spotted Ethan in the back. Well, Ethan, what are you doing here? Isn't being a scapegoat enough for you? Her cutting voice rang out. Ethan ignored her, as if she were thin air. But Claire spoke hesitantly. Ethan, are you also here for the auction? Or am I here for dinner? Ethan retorted indifferently, leaving Claire speechless. Seeing this, Chad immediately stepped forward, his eyes full of provocation. I don't care if you have money or not, but you listen to me. You won't be getting a single piece of land today. I guarantee it. He intended to use money, in this place that only respected money, to crush Ethan's dignity under his heel. Soon, the bidding reached Lot 6. The starting price was 10 million. 12 million. Chad was the first to raise his paddle, determined to win. After a few sparse bids, Chad directly raised the price to 20 million. He looked at Claire triumphantly, as if the land were already his. Claire, I told you, we have to get this. 30 million. A calm, powerful voice came from the back row. The entire hall was in an uproar, all eyes turning to the source. A single bid increase of 10 million. What an incredible display of wealth. Chad's smile froze on his face. He glared at Ethan, his eyes burning with fury. 40 million, he shouted through gritted teeth. 42 million. All right, I'll bid 45, a gruff voice called out from the front. It was Kai Jiang, the owner of Caesar's palace and the newly risen king of Seacliff City's underworld. He had entered the fray. The hall fell silent again. Even Chad quieted down. No one dared to offend this ruthless figure. Luna whispered gleefully. Humph, let's see if he still dares to act tough now. Kai Jiang scanned the room, his voice carrying an undeniable authority. I, Kai Jiang, am determined to get this piece of land. I hope you will all do me this favor. This was no longer a negotiation. It was a naked threat. Everyone thought the auction for this lot was over. 50 million. That calm voice sounded again. The entire hall fell into a dead silence. Everyone looked at Ethan as if he were a madman. He actually dared to openly challenge Kai Jiang. Chad and Luna's faces were already twisted into cruel smirks. They could almost see Ethan being dragged out and having his limbs broken. Kai Jiang's face was terrifyingly dark. He slowly turned his head, wanting to see which fool dared to publicly slap him in the face. However, when his gaze locked onto Ethan's calm face, the anger on his own face instantly vanished, replaced by utter shock and even a deep-seated fear. The entire hall was dead silent, all eyes fixed on Kai Jiang's face, anticipating an imminent explosion of rage. This was the new king of Seacliff's underworld. A public challenge was tantamount to suicide. Chad and Luna couldn't suppress the cruel smiles spreading across their faces. However, 10 seconds passed, and the expected outburst never came. Kai Jiang's face turned deathly pale, fine beads of sweat forming on his forehead. He recognized him. The calm young man sitting in the back row was the same demon who had single-handedly annihilated the Black Tiger Gang just days ago. The memory of that bloody night made Kai Jiang's very soul tremble. He opened his mouth, instinctively wanting to respectfully call out Mr. Xiao, but he swallowed the words. He knew Ethan didn't want to be associated with people like him. So, under the stunned gazes of the entire audience, Kai Jiang forced a smile uglier than a grimace and gave a slight nod towards the back row. Ahem, it seems this gentleman is very fond of this lot. In that case, I, Kai Jiang, will naturally grant him his wish. With that, he dutifully turned around and sat down, not daring to look back again. The hall was silent. What just happened? The city's underworld king, faced with a challenge, had actually backed down? Claire and her companions were utterly baffled, their minds blank. They couldn't understand it at all. Luna quickly found what she considered a reasonable explanation. Boss Kai just doesn't want to cause a scene at an official event. After the auction, Ethan is a dead man. Chad nodded in agreement. His sense of humiliation slightly eased. 50 million sold. Congratulations to Golden Faith. The auctioneer banged her gavel, officially awarding the land to Ethan. In the following bidding, Chad, trying to save face, set his sights on another lot suitable for a factory. He was certain that 50 million had drained Ethan's funds, and this time, he would not fail. The bidding quickly rose to 35 million, with no one else competing. Chad let out a smug breath and shot a provocative glance at Ethan, as if to say, "Think you're so tough? Why aren't you bidding now? Does money let you do whatever you want?" Ethan's assistant muttered angrily. "Yes, it does." Chad responded arrogantly. "Here, having money really does mean you can do whatever you want." "Is that so?" Ethan's calm voice slowly rose as he raised his paddle. "I'd like to see if money really can do whatever it wants. I bid 1 million. The hall erupted. A reverse bid? Was he insane or just trying to disrupt the auction? Chad was stunned for a moment, then burst out. "Auctioneer, he's disrupting the proceedings. Throw him out." The auctioneer was in a bind and could only look at the seller of the land, Kai Jiang. "Mr. Jiang, what do you think? Is this appropriate?" Upon hearing this, Kai Jiang immediately stood up, his face wreathed in a sincere smile. He nodded repeatedly. "Appropriate. I think it's perfectly appropriate. A price of 1 million seems very reasonable to me." This time, the entire audience was petrified. To refuse 35 million for 1 million? This wasn't just bad judgment, it was sheer madness. "It seems money can't do whatever it wants after all." Ethan's voice sounded again. The words were like a sharp slap across Chad's face. Laughter erupted from the crowd. Wealth could move heaven. It was true, but power could crush people. At this moment, Ethan's power had firmly suppressed Chad's wealth. The auction ended. Chad left empty-handed, becoming the biggest joke of the day. Ethan, on the other hand, had successfully acquired 2 plots of land for 51 million. Outside the hotel, Claire blocked Ethan's path. "Don't you think you owe me an explanation for all of this?" she asked, her tone complex. "The partnership with the Liu family, the Black Tiger Gang, and Kai Jiang." Ethan turned and looked at her quietly. "If I told you, would you believe me?" Claire froze. That single moment of hesitation made the last trace of warmth in Ethan's eyes disappear. He sneered, glancing at Luna and Chad beside her. "Claire Chin, Let me give you a piece of advice. Eyes are for seeing, and a heart is for feeling. If you have a heart, and if you are not blind, then don't use your ears to understand me. I just want to hear your explanation now. If you say it, I'll believe you, Claire said, taking 2 urgent steps forward, her tone more earnest than ever before. Ethan's sneer deepened. When he wanted to explain, she wouldn't listen or believe. Now that she wanted to hear, why should he have to speak? He slowly turned his back on her, leaving her with a resolute figure and a bone-chilling sentence. You are not worthy of my explanation. The car started, its engine stirring a gust of wind that messed up Claire's hair and blew away the bitter taste on her lips. She stood there, watching the car speed away, just as Ethan had watched her leave countless times over the past 2 years. Only this time, the roles were reversed, and the feeling was agonizing. Outside the hotel, the cool evening breeze did little to clear the confusion in Claire's heart. Seeing her wavering expression, Chad played his trump card, a feigned retreat. Claire, I am willing to use all of the Liang family's resources to help you, but it all depends on whether you trust me. If you don't, I'll leave right now and won't bother you again. His words hit Claire's weak spot. Without the Liang family's help, preparing for the medical skills competition would be incredibly difficult. She quickly steadied herself and said earnestly, Chad, I trust you. Good. A triumphant glint flashed in Chad's eyes. I contacted Dr. Julian Jiang yesterday and plan to invite him to assist us. Julian Jiang? Luna and Claire exclaimed in unison. You mean the Dr. Julian Jiang who's ranked #1 on the Seacliff City's Young Divine Healers list? The very same, Chad nodded proudly. He is the personal disciple of the medical sage, Dr. Marcus Chin. With his help, we are sure to win the competition. This news was like a shot of adrenaline for Claire. Her curiosity and doubts about Ethan were instantly replaced by her ambitions for the future. She even had the absurd thought that the mysterious divine healer, also named Xiao, who had recently overshadowed Julian Jiang, might be Ethan. But this notion was quickly drowned out by the laughter of Luna and Chad. Of course, if he were truly that capable, how could he have been kicked out of the Chin family? However, fate's script is never written by mortals. Just as Claire was fully immersed in planning for the medical competition, a phone call plunged her into an icy abyss. That evening, at the Thousand Island Lake Villa, Ethan stood on the observation deck, pondering how to break the news of the divorce to old Master Chun. In his heart, among the entire Chin family, only this old man deserved his genuine respect, the kindness of taking him in, the grace of recognizing his worth. He had to settle this debt in person. Suddenly, his phone rang urgently. It was Claire. Ethan, come to the city's People's Hospital. Grandpa wants to see you. Her voice trembled on the other end. The hospital? Is Grandpa sick? Ethan's heart clenched. Just come over first. Grandpa, Before she could finish, the call was disconnected. Without a moment's hesitation, Ethan rushed to the garage. The roar of the engine shattered the villa's tranquility as a car shot out like an arrow, speeding towards the hospital. Outside the hospital's stroke ICU, the corridor was crowded with dozens of Chun family members. The air was thick with the smell of disinfectant and despair. Claire's eyes were red as she explained, her voice shaking under Autumn Wong's grip, before Grandpa went into the operating room. He said he wanted to see Ethan one last time. Just then, the door to the operating room opened. The doctor came out, but his words were a death sentence. The patient has multiple blockages in his cranial blood vessels. The surgery is extremely difficult, with a success rate of less than 5%. I suggest we don't let the patient suffer anymore. No. Claire grabbed the doctor's white coat, begging frantically. I'll give you money, 100 million. You can have the entire Chin Corporation. Please, save my grandpa. But the doctor just shook his head helplessly. Under the tacit approval, real or feigned, of the Chun family, the treatment was abandoned. When old Master Chun was wheeled into the ICU, his face was pale as paper behind an oxygen mask. The monitors attached to him blared alarms, showing his life was rapidly slipping away. After a consultation with a team of experts led by the vice president, they too could only shake their heads. Everyone understood that old Master Chun was just waiting to die. Incompetent fools, prepare a funeral for yourselves. A furious shout, like a clap of thunder, erupted as the ward door was thrown open. Ethan stormed in, radiating a cold fury. He ignored the shocked and accusatory glares of the Chin family and rushed straight to the bedside. Seeing the once strong old man now so frail, Ethan's usually indifferent eyes instantly turned red. He took the old man's hand, his fingers on his pulse. Perhaps sensing this familiar presence, old Master Chin slowly opened his eyes. Ethan, my boy, the old man called out weakly, his voice broken. The one I worry about the most is you. His words twisted Ethan's heart. He didn't answer. His other hand pressed on the old man's biweek acupoint, his gaze focused and resolute. On the monitor beside them, the intracranial pressure value was about to redline. Grandpa, you can hold on. Ethan's voice trembled slightly, but held an undeniable power. You won't die. I won't let you die. Even if the king of hell himself comes today, I will fight him for you. As his words fell, He abruptly pulled a case of silver needles from his coat. The needles glinted coldly under the lights. Ethan, what are you doing? You failure. Grandpa is already leaving, and you still want to torture him. The Chun family, jolted back to reality, swarmed forward, a dozen hands grabbing at Ethan, trying to pull him away from the bed. To them, this was madness, the ultimate disrespect to the dying. Get off. Ethan shook his shoulders, and an invisible wave of energy sent the group stumbling backward. He slowly stood up, turned around, and in his bloodshot eyes, a furious fire and a chilling coldness burned. From now on, his voice was not loud, but it reached every ear, laced with a hellish chill. If anyone takes another step forward, I will make them die. For a moment, the entire ward was silent. Everyone was stunned by this insane, domineering presence. It was the first time they had seen the man who had been submissive for 2 years show such a terrifying side. Under their horrified gazes, Ethan ignored all voices. He took a deep breath. His left hand moved over the old man's body like a dancing butterfly, too fast for the eye to follow. Then, his right hand picked up a silver needle, and with a flick of his wrist, a silver glint shot out like a breaking dawn, piercing the intang point between the old man's eyebrows with perfect accuracy. That silver glint, as fast as lightning, precisely pierced the intang point between old Master Chen's eyebrows. Before anyone could react, Ethan's wrist became a blur of motion. 12 silver needles of varying lengths danced between his fingers like sprites, Fengqi, Baiwei, Wangu, Ermin, one after another, without a millimeter of error. In an instant, the 12 needles crisscrossed, forming the shimmering outline of a silver dragon on the old man's head. Several traditional Chinese medicine professors in the ward watched, dumbfounded. This technique was something they had never even heard of. But it wasn't over. Ethan took a deep breath and slowly drew out the last, longest needle. His hand was trembling slightly, sweat beading on his forehead. Everyone's heart was in their throat. They watched as he held his breath, the cold glint of the needle tip seeming to pierce through time and space, as he aimed for an unbelievable acupoint and thrust it down. The Tianguan point, an old doctor exclaimed in shock. When that needle landed, it was like a stroke of divine inspiration, dotting the eyes of the dormant silver dragon. Bzz. As if a slumbering dragon had been awakened, all 13 needles began to hum at a high frequency. The sound was subtle yet sharp, like a dragon's roar or a phoenix's cry, piercing through bone and marrow to the very soul. Ethan let out a long breath, his back completely soaked in sweat. He didn't dare to rest. He made a fist with his right hand and used his knuckles to gently, but firmly press against the old man's Nohu acupoint. Suddenly, a terrified scream cut through the silence of the ward. Oh my God, blood! He's bleeding. Everyone looked in horror. Dark, viscous blood was slowly trickling from old Master Chen's nostrils and ears, a terrifying sight. Ethan, you bastard! What did you do to Grandpa? The Chun family erupted, their furious roars nearly tearing the roof off. Murderer! Your crime is unforgivable. Wait! The vice president, Dr. Zhang, suddenly looked as if he'd seen a ghost. He pointed a trembling finger at the monitor, his voice distorted with excitement. The intracranial pressure. The pressure is dropping. The old master's condition is improving. What? The crowd whipped their heads around. On the screen, the red line that represented the threat of death was visibly falling, gradually approaching the normal green zone. He's expelling the clotted blood from his brain. Dr. Zhang was trembling all over. In his decades of medical practice, he had never witnessed such a divine skill. Without surgery, without medication, with just a case of silver needles, this man had snatched someone from the jaws of death. At this point, all the Chun family members were frozen in place, their expressions shifting from anger to shock, then to disbelief, and finally to a complete blank. Ethan actually knew medicine? And it was such a miraculous skill? Ethan was deaf to the surrounding noise. He knelt by the bed, carefully removing the needles, then gently wiped the blood from the old man's face with a medical cloth. His actions were filled with immense care, as if he were handling a priceless treasure. The scene was a stark, ironic contrast to the relatives behind him, who were only thinking about their inheritance. Claire watched Ethan's back, and a soft spot in her heart was viciously stabbed. When the old man's breathing finally stabilized and a bit of color returned to his face, Ethan slowly stood up and turned around. His bloodshot eyes burned with a cold fire. Now, isn't it time we settled our accounts? He walked step by step towards Vice President Zhang. Under the doctor's terrified gaze, he raised his arm and delivered a resounding slap that echoed through the silent ward. The patient clearly had a chance, yet you told them to prepare for a funeral. What kind of doctor are you? Dr. Zhang clutched his face, not daring to utter a word. In the face of such skill, his proud qualifications and status were nothing but a joke. Ethan didn't stop. His gaze shifted to the Chun family daughter-in-law who had been the first to press for a will. The woman backed away in fear, but Ethan grabbed her by the collar. Grandpa wasn't even dead, and you were already eager to divide the inheritance. Are you even human? Another crisp slap sent the woman seeing stars. The entire Chen family was silent. No one dared to speak. Just then, the ward door opened, and an old man with white hair and a beard rushed in. It was the hospital's highly respected traditional Chinese medicine authority, Dr. Lin. He had heard of a master performing a miraculous needle technique and had hurried over. When he leaned down and saw the residual needle marks on old Master Chen's head, he gasped in astonishment. Divine skill. I never imagined there was such a divine healer in Seacliff City. Dr. Lin, what exactly is this needle technique? Someone asked with a trembling voice. This is the legendary 12-path roving dragon needle technique. Dr. Lin's voice was filled with reverence. He then added, but you only know half of it. The true roving dragon technique has a 13th needle that defies fate. To use this needle is to act against the heavens, and it comes at the cost of one's own cultivation and lifespan. His words struck Claire like a bolt of lightning. She instantly understood why Ethan had been so weak and drenched in sweat after performing the procedure. He was using his own life to trade for her grandfather's. And they, his so-called family, had stood by, questioning and insulting him. An indescribable wave of sorrow and guilt washed over Claire. As the atmosphere in the ward grew heavy, Chad Liang and Luna Li pushed open the door, followed by an arrogant-looking young man. Claire, don't worry, I brought Dr. Julian Jiang. The arrival of the newcomer caused another stir among the Chen family. This was the top-ranked young divine healer. Julian Jiang ignored everyone and walked straight to the bedside. When his eyes fell on the fading needle marks on old Master Chen's head, his usually arrogant face instantly drained of all color, his pupils contracting violently. Because he knew better than anyone that this complete 12-path roving dragon needle technique, including the 13th fate-defying needle, could only be performed by one person in the entire world. That person was a legend his own master had spent a lifetime trying to surpass, yet couldn't even touch his shadow. What was he doing here? Chapter 50. The air in the ward seemed to freeze. Julian Zhang's eyes were locked on the fading needle marks on old Master Chen's head, his usually arrogant face, for the first time, drained of color. The 12-path roving dragon needle technique, and the complete version with the heaven-defying 13th needle. How is that possible? A figure capable of such divine skill was like a celestial dragon. Why would he deign to appear in the small city of Seacliff? As Julian's mind reeled, Luna and Chad eagerly began their attack. Claire, you weren't fooled by him, were you? Luna pouted, her face full of disbelief. If Ethan Xiao knows medicine, then the sun could rise from the west. It's true, Claire said, frowning. Though she was also filled with doubt, Dr. Lin's words still echoed in her ears. Dr. Lin confirmed it himself. Who is Dr. Lin? Chad sneered, drawing everyone's attention to Julian. Whether it's true or not, Dr. Zhang will know at a glance. His judgment is the final authority. Everyone held their breath, awaiting the final verdict from Seacliff's #1 young medical talent. Julian slowly straightened up, his face regaining its usual arrogance. He scanned the room and uttered a few words that pierced Claire's heart like icicles. You have all been deceived. He paused, savoring the crowd's shock, then added with absolute certainty. This is definitely not the legendary 12-path roving dragon needle technique. His declaration set the ward abuzz. The contempt and disdain the Chen family had suppressed now resurfaced with a vengeance. I knew he was just a blind cat stumbling upon a dead mouse. Thank goodness for Dr. Zhang's sharp eyes, exposing this fraud. Disgusting, we were almost fooled by that failure. Amid the true ear-piercing discussions, Claire felt the world spin. She didn't want to believe it, but Julian's status and confidence left her powerless to argue. Dr. Zhang, how did you determine that? Miss Chen, are you questioning my professional judgment? Julian's face darkened. I'm not questioning you, it's just. Claire bit her lip, making one last stand. Fine, then I'll crush your hopes. Julian's voice carried a cruel superiority. I studied under the medical sage, Dr. Marcus Chin, and he personally told me that in this world, there is only one person who can perform the complete roving dragon technique. And that person is someone my own master would have to respectfully call Grandmaster. Now, are you going to tell me that the failure named Ethan Xiao is my great-grandmaster? Great-grandmaster? The words struck Claire like a thunderbolt, shattering her last remaining illusion. Of course, how was that possible? It was utterly preposterous. She slowly lowered her head, her voice dry. I'm sorry, Dr. Zhang. I was being presumptuous. In that moment, her image of Ethan plummeted from a mysterious figure who might possess incredible skills to a charlatan who put on a show for attention. Yet, even so, a small voice inside her screamed. Then what about Grandpa's recovery? What about my own body? Were all the subtle changes over the past year just coincidences? Were the medicinal soups Ethan brought me really just ordinary food? She wanted to ask, to argue, but under the scornful and mocking gazes of the crowd, the words caught in her throat, finally dissolving into a helpless sigh. The next morning, in the lakeside villa, Ethan was intently brewing a pot of rich, fragrant medicinal soup. The fatigue from performing the heaven-defying needle technique the night before had mostly faded after a night's rest. The vibration of his phone interrupted his thoughts. It was Claire. Why didn't you answer your phone yesterday? Weren't you worried about Grandpa? Her voice was laced with anger the moment he answered. I wasn't worried. Ethan's reply was calm and steady. To Claire, this calmness was proof of his irresponsibility. She took a deep breath, suppressed her anger, and got straight to the point. The technique you used yesterday, was it the 12-path roving dragon needle technique or not? It was, but Dr. Jiang said it wasn't. Claire's voice rose sharply. He said that in the whole world, only his great-grandmaster knows the complete technique. Ethan's hand, stirring the soup, paused for a moment. Then he chuckled. He wasn't wrong. So what answer are you looking for? I want the real answer. Fine, I'll give it to you. Ethan's voice came through the receiver, clear and cold. I don't know about any medical rankings, and I don't know any Julian Jiang. But if his master, Marcus Chin, saw me, he would have to kneel and call me Grandmaster. Is that answer good enough? A long, dead silence followed on the other end of the line, broken only by the sound of Claire's increasingly heavy breathing. A few seconds later, a sigh full of disappointment came through. Ethan, I really wanted to believe you this once. But you've disappointed me so much. She thought he was not just a liar, but a madman. His ravings were utterly absurd. Disappointed? Ethan sneered. You are not worthy to say those two words. With that, he hung up. Half an hour later, he appeared at the hospital with a thermal container. Under Claire's complex gaze, he fed old Master Chin the medicine, spoonful by spoonful. In the hallway, Claire stopped him, making one last effort. For saving Grandpa's life, let me give you a piece of advice. Leave Golden Faith as soon as possible. It's a pit of fire. Someone wants to set you up as a scapegoat. I know. Ethan replied, his expression as placid as ever. His indifference finally infuriated Claire. She stepped in front of him, blocking his path, all reason replaced by an inexplicable emotion, her words laced with a strong, unconscious jealousy. Stop right there. You're so reluctant to leave Golden Faith because of Jasmine Liu, aren't you? Chapter 51. Faced with Claire's question, laced with jealousy and anger, Ethan simply paused, turning halfway, his voice devoid of any warmth. That doesn't seem to have anything to do with you, does it? His words were like a cold, sharp sword, instantly severing Claire's last emotional tie. She was speechless. Yes, they were separated. Who he was with had nothing to do with her. I know it has nothing to do with me, she retorted, clinging to her last shred of pride. I was just reminding you out of kindness, for saving Grandpa's life. Since you won't listen, I'll just wait and see you make a fool of yourself. Ethan didn't look back again, leaving behind only a calm but resonant sentence that echoed in the empty corridor. Then you just watch and see who makes a fool of whom. I told you I would make you look up to me. That promise still stands. Inside the chairman's office at Golden Faith, the atmosphere was as heavy as lead. Mr. Xiao, my father said that this time, it's likely the other two great families have made a move. Jasmine Liu's voice trembled slightly. The three giants of Seacliff City had always maintained a fragile balance, and now, that balance was clearly broken. Golden Faith was just a small boat in the eye of the storm. Have you done what I asked you to do? Ethan ignored her worries, asking calmly. It's all done, Jasmine nodded. Good. Bring Quentin Zhang in. 3 minutes later, the former vice chairman, Quentin Zhang, walked into the office. Jasmine tactfully closed the door, leaving them alone. 10 minutes later, an angry roar suddenly erupted from the office, accompanied by the loud thud of a fist slamming on the desk. If you do this, my life is ruined. Quentin's eyes were bloodshot as he stared at Ethan. Ethan calmly sipped his tea. Your life was already ruined. Ruined by your own hands. His gaze fell on the familiar file folder on the desk. It contained all of Quentin's incriminating evidence, the Damocles sword hanging over his head. You're threatening me. Quentin squeezed the words through his teeth. You can see it that way. Ethan put down his cup, his voice terrifyingly calm. But right now, you have no other choice. Quentin laughed, a smile uglier than a grimace. Yes, from the moment Ethan had gotten a hold of his secrets, he had lost all choice. Finally, under Ethan's promise to protect your family, he completely broke down and agreed. Before leaving, he looked at this young man, whose mind was as deep as an ancient well, and said with genuine emotion, Sometimes I really wonder if your young body houses the soul of an old monster who has lived for centuries. The storm came faster than expected. Shortly after Quentin left, Jasmine rushed in, her face pale. Mr. Xiao, multiple regulatory departments are heading our way in a joint operation. Ethan slowly stood up and said only 2 words. Let's go. The two went to an office building across the street. From the 5th-floor window, they could clearly see the apocalyptic scene unfolding at Golden Faith's entrance. The Bureau of Commerce, the Tax Bureau, the Food and Drug Administration. A fleet of official vehicles, like sharks that had smelled blood, surrounded the company. Marcus Liu's call came at the right time, but it brought news that even the Liu family was powerless. Their opponents were using an open, legitimate strategy, giving them no reason to intervene. Any move would only confirm that Golden Faith was a Liu family asset, playing right into their hands. Just then, the roar of more engines came from downstairs. More than 20 luxury cars arrived, carrying the most prominent figures in Seacliff City's business circle. They were Jasmine's last resort, allies bound by the huge profits of Golden Faith. However, this last card seemed utterly feeble against the might of the state apparatus. No matter how much these bosses pleaded or promised, the law enforcement officers remained firm, giving no one any face. 20 minutes later, the group of bosses helplessly cleared the way. It's over. Jasmine leaned against the cold glass window, her body trembling slightly, the last spark of hope in her heart extinguished. Her phone rang incessantly with calls from their partners, but she no longer had the heart to answer. She turned to look at Ethan, who was still standing with his hands behind his back, his expression impassive. Her voice held a note of pleading. Mr. Xiao, what other tricks do you have up your sleeve? Please, just tell me. Ethan didn't turn around, his gaze still fixed on the group of law enforcement officers about to enter Golden Faith's doors. His voice was calm, yet carried a power that could soothe the soul. You'll see soon enough. The air in the hospital corridor, thick with Claire's jealous accusation, hung heavy. Ethan merely gave her an indifferent glance and turned to leave, his cold words echoing behind him. I told you I would make you look up to me. That promise still stands. He had neither the time nor the interest to get entangled in past romantic affairs. A real storm was already gathering over Seacliff City, and its epicenter was his temporary base, the Golden Faith Company. At that moment, on the top floor of a skyscraper overlooking Golden Faith, a middle-aged man with slicked-back hair held a cigar, looking down on the scene below like a god. His surname was Lin, one of the three giants of Seacliff City, the head of the Lin family. His assistant reported respectfully, Mr. Lin, the celebration banquet has been arranged. It's at the Liu family's own Elysian Fields Hotel. Excellent, Mr. Lin exhaled a thick cloud of smoke, a cruel smile on his lips. He wanted far more than just a small company. He wanted the Liu family behind it, the right to host the upcoming medical skills competition, and the ladder to the heavens that was the Yi family in the capital. To achieve this, he had laid a trap, mobilizing all his forces to crush the Liu family with overwhelming power. I don't care who this new Mr. Xiao is or what tricks he has. Today, I will devour Golden Faith. And then, I will devour the Liu family. His laughter echoed eerily against the massive floor-to-ceiling windows. Meanwhile, in the Liu family mansion, the atmosphere was suffocating. Marcus Liu's face was ashen, and all the core members of the Liu family's second generation were silent, like beasts with their throats squeezed. I've received word that our opponents have evidence of all the connections between Golden Faith and the Liu family. Once Golden Faith falls, the fire will spread to us immediately. Marcus's voice was hoarse and weak. A bunch of fools. From the head of the table, Old Master Liu slammed his cane on the floor with a dull thud. He glared at his descendants, his voice trembling with anger. You all act so capable usually, and now, you pin all your hopes on a young girl like Jasmine, letting her shield the entire family from the storm? You are truly shameless. The old master stood up, scanned the room, and announced, word by word, my stance remains the same. The capable will rise. If Jasmine can resolve this crisis, Marcus will be the lifelong chairman of the Liu Corporation, and I will unconditionally transfer 40% of the headquarters shares to Jasmine. Everyone was stunned, but they all knew it was an impossible task, a dead-end situation that even they, the elites of the Liu family, couldn't solve. How could a 20-something girl like Jasmine possibly manage it? In the eye of the storm, in the office building opposite Golden Faith, Jasmine's heart had sunk to the bottom. Her last card, the partners bound by mutual interest, had been routed by the authorities' firm stance. Downstairs, law enforcement officers walked unimpeded into Golden Faith. She could even imagine the piles of fraudulent accounts in the finance department being exposed within minutes. Mr. Xiao. She turned, her voice trembling with despair. Golden Faith falling is a small matter, but the Liu family, and you, will be implicated. You can still leave now. I will take all the responsibility. Ethan didn't turn around, just watched the scene opposite them, his voice as calm as if he were discussing the weather. Give me 10 minutes. After 10 minutes, you can leave if you still want to. Those 10 minutes were the longest, most torturous of Jasmine's life. Every second was a slow, agonizing death of hope. She watched as the officers stormed the company, secured all departments, and finally converged on the chairman's office on the top floor. She knew it was all over. However, the call she expected, summoning her for questioning, never came. As the 10 minutes were about to end, she saw an entirely different, unbelievable scene. A group of officers escorting a middle-aged man in handcuffs out of the Golden Faith building. That man was Quentin Zhang. Why is it Quentin Zhang? Her mind went blank. Just then, her phone rang urgently. It was the company president, Liam Song. Miss Liu, his voice on the other end was distorted with excitement. The situation. It's resolved. Vice Chairman Zhang. He took responsibility for everything. All the company's assets were transferred out beforehand. It's just an empty shell now. The fire won't touch any of us. Jasmine felt as if she'd been struck by lightning. She whipped her head around, staring at Ethan's comm profile. She remembered their secret meeting, Quentin's complex expression as he left. It turned out, the net had been laid from that moment on. Sacrificing the chariot to save the king, removing the firewood from under the cauldron, shedding the golden cicada's shell. He had used a pawn everyone looked down on to defuse a fatal blow aimed at the entire Liu family. Liam Song's voice continued on the other end of the line, but a tempest was raging in Jasmine's mind. She whipped her head around to stare at Ethan, the man who had remained as calm as still water throughout the ordeal. She finally understood. From the moment he had Quentin Zhang complete the share transfer, this thrilling business war had already been played out on his chessboard countless times. Mr. Xiao, you had me transfer funds to Golden Faith under the name of Elysian Therapeutics. Was that to legally acquire Golden Faith's assets? She asked, her voice trembling. What had once been confusing and worrying was now crystal clear. Elysian Therapeutics, the clean company created to sever ties, had been the most crucial part of his escape plan. One link connected to another, flawlessly. He was like a master chess player standing above the clouds, observing the entire game, every move of every person within his calculations. How could he not be composed? How could he not be calm? Are you satisfied with this outcome? Ethan finally turned his head and asked coolly. Satisfied? Jasmine was at a loss for words, her heart a mix of shock, admiration, and a strange feeling of being completely conquered that left her breathless. After a long moment, she said with a hint of playful complaint, "Why didn't you tell me earlier? You had me worried for so long." Success is achieved through secrecy. Words lead to failure. Ethan's statement made Jasmine nod in understanding. Yes, such a meticulous plan could have failed if even the slightest detail had been leaked. I'm convinced. Mr. Xiao, I am truly, utterly convinced. She let out a long breath, her gaze towards Ethan now filled with an almost fanatical admiration. Meanwhile, on the top floor of the opposite office building, Mr. Lin also received news of the failed operation. He furiously threw his cigar to the ground, his handsome face contorted with rage. He had calculated everything, except for the fact that Jasmine Liu had such a terrifying expert guiding her. His carefully planned thunderous strike had only resulted in a worthless, empty shell of a company and a willing scapegoat. How could he not be furious? Investigate. Investigate now? I don't care who he is. I want him torn to pieces. Mr. Lin's roar echoed through the top-floor office for a long time. At the Liu family mansion, however, the atmosphere was the complete opposite. When Jasmine laid out Ethan's entire plan, the conference room fell into a prolonged silence. From Gavin, who had previously mocked her, to the authoritative old Master Liu, every single person's face was etched with disbelief. Shedding the golden cicada's shell, removing the firewood from under the cauldron, sacrificing the chariot to save the king. Any one of these strategies used alone would be useless. Only by using all three together could such a miraculous effect be achieved. Old Master Liu stood up excitedly, his cloudy eyes shining with a sharp light. Excellent. What a brilliant countermove. Mr. Xiao is a true business genius. I am thoroughly impressed. The entire Liu family was completely won over by the skill of this young man they had never even met. Gavin, his face ashen, handed over his shares in the multi-billion-dollar hotel. Old Master Liu also fulfilled his promise on the spot, announcing that Marcus Liu's branch would now have complete control over the future of the Liu Corporation. The Liu family had not only survived the crisis but had turned disaster into fortune, completing a smooth transition of power. And all of this was thanks to the young man they had once looked down upon. In stark contrast to the Liu family celebration was the gloom in Claire Chen's office. Claire, it's confirmed. The legal representative of Golden Faith has been taken in for investigation. Luna burst in excitedly, dancing with joy. That failure Ethan is probably going to rot in jail for the rest of his life. This is great news. Claire's eyes dimmed instantly. She waved Luna out and walked alone to the floor-to-ceiling window, her heart filled with mixed feelings. It was a lie to say she wasn't worried. They had been married for 2 years, after all. No matter how much she looked down on Ethan, she didn't want him to end up like this. She took out her phone and used every connection she had to try and get information, to find some way to help. Hello, Director Liu, this is Claire Chun. The response from the other end was officially cold. President Chun, don't ask about this, and don't get involved. Be careful not to get burned. The legal representative of Golden Faith has confessed to all crimes. The evidence is irrefutable, and the case is already closed. There is no room for maneuver. No room for maneuver. The word struck Claire's heart like a heavy hammer. She didn't give up, making several more calls, but the answers were all the same. Her heart sank, turning completely cold. Claire hung up the phone and stood by the floor-to-ceiling window for a long time. In her mind, Ethan was now in a prison uniform, paying the price for his impulsiveness and foolishness behind cold iron bars. She was frustrated with him, yet couldn't help but feel a flicker of pity. Finally, she took off the smooth, oval pendant from her chest. It was the only gift Ethan had given her on their wedding night. Inside, a faint golden character for Xiao was engraved. She rubbed it for a long while before slowly putting it in her pocket, as if sealing away a mistaken past for good. Meanwhile, at the Thousand Island Lake Villa, the lights were bright, and the air was filled with the aroma of wine. Jasmine had brought a feast to thank Ethan. After a few drinks, her pretty face was flushed. Mr. Xiao, you know, this afternoon my father said that this was the proudest day he's had in his 40 years with the Liu family. Jasmine's eyes were hazy, her words filled with irrepressible excitement and adoration. Fueled by the alcohol, she revealed many secrets of Seacliff City's elite circles, including a now-dormant power that had once overshadowed even the 5 great families of the capital. The head of the capital's 6 great families, the Xiao family. I heard from my grandfather that the Xiao family excelled in both medicine and martial arts. Their children could identify herbs at the age of 3 and debate with experts by 10. 20 years ago, a genius teenager emerged, whose medical skills surpassed countless masters in the capital. He was called a medical legend. As Jasmine spoke, she suddenly paused and looked sharply at Ethan. Mr. Xiao, your surname is also Xiao, and you're so skilled in medicine. You couldn't be. Ethan just shook his head. He had no memories of any Xiao family. Jasmine laughed at herself. Of course, if he were such a figure, how could he have ended up in Seacliff City, married into the Qin family? The next day, as agreed, Ethan went to the South District to formally take over the 6-star, multi-billion-dollar hotel that Gavin Liu had lost to him, the Elysian Fields Hotel. The hotel lobby was magnificent and luxurious. Ethan walked through it like a king surveying his domain. After a brief tour, just as he was about to meet with the handover team, he saw a few familiar figures at the entrance. Claire Chun, Chad Liang, Luna Li, and Autumn Wang. The 4 of them were walking towards the hotel entrance with cheerful expressions, clearly on their way to an important meeting. Mom, when Dr. Zhang arrives, please don't say anything foolish, Claire reminded her. I know. I'm not a failure like Ethan. Autumn Wang grumbled impatiently. Auntie Wang, haven't you heard? Luna leaned in conspiratorially. That failure has been arrested. He probably won't be getting out in this lifetime. Ha ha ha, really? That's fantastic news. Autumn Wang clapped her hands in delight. Chad was even more smug. He felt that the stumbling block named Ethan was finally gone, and it was time to move forward with his and Claire's relationship. He brought it on himself. What does it have to do with us? Luna laughed coquettishly. I once said he'd starve on the streets after leaving the Qin family. Looks like I was wrong. He'll have prison food every day, he won't starve. The 3 of them burst into harsh laughter. Only Claire frowned, remaining silent. Just then, a calm voice drifted from behind them. I've never actually had prison food. Why don't you tell me what it tastes like? The laughter died instantly. The 3 of them whipped around, and their expressions froze as if they'd seen a ghost. Ethan, Luna shrieked. What? What are you doing here? Why can't I be here? Ethan walked forward slowly, his expression indifferent. You shouldn't be here. Chad, recovering from his shock, was filled with disbelief. The news he had received was that the person in charge of Golden Faith had irrefutable evidence against him and couldn't possibly be released. Ethan, what are you so arrogant about? Luna, regaining her composure, immediately put on a disdainful expression. Even if you didn't go to jail, Golden Faith is gone. You're just a broke failure now. Who gave you the guts to act so cocky in front of us? Chad stepped forward, adopting a superior tone. This is the Elysian Fields, Seacliff City's top hotel. The minimum spending is 100,000. I am a premium member here. And you, a failure who can't even be a proper freeloader. You think you belong in a place like this? You dare to tell us to get lost? The warmth in Ethan's eyes slowly faded. When Autumn Wang brought up old Master Chen again, saying the old man must have been blind, the last trace of calm in Ethan's eyes vanished. I'm warning you, say another word about Grandpa, and don't blame me for what happens. Oh, you dare threaten my mother-in-law. Chad, seeing his chance to shine, puffed out his chest and said fiercely, Go on, touch me. I dare you. Let me tell you, with one word from me, the 100 security guards here will beat you to a pulp. Then let's see. As Ethan's words fell, his arm blurred through the air. Crack. A crisp, loud slap echoed through the luxurious lobby. Chad was sent spinning 2.5 times, seeing stars. Before Luna could even rush forward, another backhand slap sent her sprawling to the floor. Ethan, I'm going to destroy you today. Chad roared, clutching his burning face in a rage. Someone. Security. Get all your security guards here. Kill him for me. In the magnificent lobby of the Elysian Fields Hotel, the air grew tense with Chad's roar. The receptionist didn't dare to delay, immediately calling for backup on his walkie-talkie. Soon, the lobby manager, Peter Zhang, arrived with more than 20 uniformed security guards, surrounding them menacingly. Ethan, you're in big trouble now. Autumn Wang said, crossing her arms with a gloating smirk. Beat him. I'll take responsibility if you kill him. Chad shrieked, his face contorted with rage as he clutched his burning cheek. Peter Zhang waved his hand, and the 20-plus guards drew their batons, ready to swarm forward. At that critical moment, a sharp shout came from the entrance. "Stop!" Everyone turned to see the hotel's general manager, Yanis Yang, striding quickly towards them with his secretary. Chad and his group perked up, thinking their own prestige was so great that it had alarmed the hotel's top executive. Chad even extended his hand, ready to receive Yanis's handshake and condolences. However, Yanis walked past him as if he were invisible, leaving Chad's outstretched hand hanging awkwardly in midair. Under everyone's astonished gazes, Yanis hurried to Ethan, bowed sharply at a 90-degree angle, and said with a hint of panic, "Mr. Xiao, I was held up by an urgent matter. I am so sorry. If you had been any later, I would have been thrown out," Ethan said coolly. "It's my failure." Yanis's body trembled. He spun around and roared at Peter Zhang. "You blind fool. You dare to offend Mr. Xiao. Are you tired of living?" Before he finished, 2 resounding slaps landed squarely on Peter's face, making his nose bleed. Chad was completely stunned. His face flushed red as he demanded, "Manager Yang, you can't afford to offend him, but you can afford to offend me, Chad Liang." Yanis finally shot him a sideways glance, as if just noticing his presence. "And who might you be?" "I am a platinum member of your hotel." Chad brandished the glittering silver card, a symbol of his status and wealth. A platinum member, with an annual spending of over 10 million, is indeed a valued guest of the Elysian Fields. Yanis nodded. Then his tone shifted, a cold sneer appearing on his face. "But for offending Mr. Xiao, it doesn't matter if you're a platinum member, or even a supreme member. Men, show these distinguished platinum members out." His words shocked everyone. Offending a guest who spends 10 million a year for a nobody? Had Yanis lost his mind? "Are you insane?" Chad roared. Yanis finally dropped all pretense. His voice boomed like thunder, rolling through the ears of everyone present. "A platinum member is indeed a valued guest. But Mr. Xiao is the owner of the Elysian Fields. What gives you the audacity to offend him here?" "Owner." Ethan was the owner of this 6-star hotel. This fact was like a bombshell, shattering the superiority of Chad, Luna, and Autumn Wong. Their expressions shifted from smugness to shock, then to stunned silence, and finally to a deathly pallor. Claire covered her mouth in shock, looking at the calmly standing man as if she were in a dream. "Good day, Mr. Xiao." Peter Zhang was the quickest to react, leading all the employees in a synchronized bow, their voices echoing through the lobby. Amidst the deafening greeting, Ethan spoke slowly. His voice was not loud, but it carried an undeniable authority. "Since Mr. Liang has introduced himself, we should naturally do something. From this moment on, the Elysian Fields Hotel and all its partners will blacklist the Liang Corporation. Service will be permanently refused." You dare!" Chad roared, his bravado failing him. "Get out," Ethan said, not even bothering to look at him again. Yanis immediately understood and signaled to Peter. Just as Chad and the others were being half pushed, half escorted out of the hotel, his phone rang. It was his father, Warren Liang. Chad smugly put the call on speaker, ready to complain. "Dad, let me tell you." "Tell me what?" "You better tell me honestly. Who the hell did you offend?" His father's furious roar blasted from the phone. "I was in the middle of closing a $100 million deal when I was forcibly kicked out of the hotel. You little bastard, what kind of trouble have you gotten into?" Chad felt as if he had plunged into an icy abyss, standing frozen on the spot. It turned out Ethan wasn't bluffing. When he said blacklist, he meant it, and the efficiency was terrifyingly fast. From the moment he gave the order to his father being kicked out of another hotel, no more than 10 minutes had passed. This wasn't a business tactic. This was the law of his word. "You need to get your ass back here right now. I swear I'm going to break your legs today." Warren Liang's roar echoed through the phone before he violently hung up. Chad stood there, clutching his phone, his face pale, the humiliation and anger almost consuming him. He roughly pushed away Luna Li, who had approached him with concern, only realizing his outburst when he saw Claire Chen's frowning brow. He quickly made an excuse and drove away in disgrace. Meanwhile, in the Liang family villa, pig-like squeals filled the air. Warren Liang whipped Chad with a leather belt, each lash carrying the fury of a lost $100 million deal. He couldn't understand how the worthless ant, Ethan Xiao, could possess such power. After some questioning and analysis, he concluded that the Liu family must be pulling the strings, with Ethan being nothing more than a puppet pushed to the forefront to manage things. "We need to speed up the plan against the Chen family. We don't have much time," Warren said before leaving in a hurry, leaving behind a bruised and battered Chad, his eyes filled with venom. Old grudges and new hatred now swirled in Chad's heart. He had not only lost face in front of Claire and caused a huge loss for his family, but had also been ruthlessly crushed by the person he despised the most. This humiliation and jealousy completely ignited the murderous intent in his heart. "Ethan Xiao, you are the biggest obstacle in my plan. I will kill you." Chad climbed up from the floor, a cold, sinister light flickering in his eyes. As evening approached at the lakeside villa, Ethan was enjoying a rare moment of leisure, holding a cup of tea and quietly watching the sunset over the lake. With the golden faith matter resolved, his next step was to prepare for the medical skills competition and obtain the 7-leaf evergreen that could help restore his memory. Just then, his phone rang. The caller ID showed Claire Chun. "Ethan, I want to talk to you properly." Claire's hesitant voice came from the other end. "There's no need." Ethan refused without hesitation. "I have something to give you," Claire added. "The pendant you gave me 2 years ago." Ethan fell silent. It was the only token he had given her when he had no memory. If she wanted to return it, it meant a complete break. He asked for the address and drove to the Blue Sky Bar in the Riverside district. The bar was in a secluded location, with a terrace built directly over the river, offering a charming view and a cool night breeze. Claire and Luna sat in a corner, the center of attention. Claire's conservative attire couldn't hide her noble figure, while Luna was dressed boldly, flirting with the men around her and frequently adding new contacts on her messaging app. Claire was very uncomfortable in this setting. She didn't know that this meeting, from start to finish, had been instigated and designed by Luna. 20 minutes later, Ethan arrived. He ignored Luna's sneers and got straight to the point with Claire. "The thing." "Ethan, Claire asked you out personally. She's giving you face," Luna shrieked. "The one who's shameless is you." Ethan glanced at her coldly. "Or was the slap this morning not hard enough? When I'm speaking, you'd better shut up, or I don't mind throwing you into the river for a bath." Claire stopped Luna from arguing further. She looked at this incredibly unfamiliar ex-husband, her heart a mix of emotions. She slowly opened her hand, and the oval pendant lay quietly in her palm. When Ethan reached for it, she subconsciously closed her fingers. "Do you really have nothing to say to me?" she asked, biting her red lip, mustering her courage. Ethan just shook his head and sneered. He took back the pendant, put it in his pocket, and turned to leave. Just then, a few thuggish-looking youths with bleached hair surrounded them, making lewd advances towards Claire. Ethan frowned, about to act, but one of the youths pointed at him arrogantly. "What are you looking at him for? If he dares to say a word, I'll beat his teeth out." Thwack! A bottle shattered over the youth's head. Just as his companions were about to retaliate, a rush of heavy footsteps came from the bar entrance. The wooden terrace floor rumbled as a massive, dark crowd of people, all burly and armed with steel pipes and machetes, swarmed in like a tide. A quick count showed at least 100 men. They came with menacing intent, and all their eyes, like poisoned daggers, were locked onto Ethan. Ethan narrowed his eyes, his mind racing. He suddenly turned his head to look at Claire beside him, his eyes filled with a cold, questioning glare. "Was it you?"